This video is made possible by donations to the United States Lighthouse Society from people like you. I am talking today with my friend Matthew Cohen, photographer, incredible photographer, professional sailor, photographer of all kinds of nautical subjects, including lighthouses. Thanks so much for doing this today, Matthew.
Thank you. This is a great opportunity. Appreciate it.
Sure. So you and I, we had spoken before, but we met a couple of weeks ago when I was down in Rhode Island, and we went to Bristol Ferry Lighthouse together.
Yep. A
And
favorite place of mine as well.
yeah, I had never been in there before, so that was a treat getting in there and doing the interview with Simon and Laura Thomas, the owners, up in the
Yep.
Lantern Room, and you
They're
took part
wonderful
in that.
people. Yeah, they're wonderful people, and they've um, given me a great opportunity to capture a lot of the very special access and the characteristics of that lighthouse.
Yeah, that's beautiful. They've done such a good job with it. So maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later again. But and also when I was down there, I spoke at the Bristol Yacht Club that same evening after we were at Bristol Ferry Lighthouse, and you attended that. Thanks for coming to that. It was an interesting evening. I think it overall went pretty well, but it felt like the forces of technology were against me for for a while
Well,
there.
it's okay. You persevered, and it was a great show. So
Well, thank you. As I said in one of the podcast episodes with Judy Ann Point, my friend from Rhode Island, she was there too, and I mentioned to her that somebody came up at the end of the presentation and said that I was like a lighthouse keeper against the storm, which I think is maybe the coolest comment I've ever had after a presentation. So,
yeah, and very fitting. So yeah, I would agree with
yeah.
her.
So today, Matthew, we're actually doing two separate things. We're going right now you're going to do a visual presentation of some of your photography, and we're going to talk about it. But we're also doing an audio interview for just the audio version of the podcast, and they'll kind of augment each other, I would say. So it's fun to be able to do both with you. So first, we're going to take a look at some of your photography. So whenever you're ready, you can go ahead and go into screen sharing. If you want.
Okay. Jeremy, thank you much for the opportunity. This is a unique um, selection of this special project that I'm doing with lighthouses, and it's going to be titled Night Houses.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of photography that you see in the world and film, and especially on the internet, is a lot of lighthouses that are taking middle of the day with a smartphone from a mile away or at the base of the stanchion, and um, I wanted to do the complete opposite. As you can see, my background photo is inside Rose Island Lighthouse lens. It's in, like, my head is basically in the lens, and what you're seeing on my screen is the a split interior and exterior of Sakana Lighthouse. And the whole impetus of this project is to capture lighthouses at night with special wide angle lenses. And the most important part and challenging part is getting access, getting on board, and showcasing what lighthouses do. They are day shapes during the day, but for the most part, sailors and mariners have relied on them for hundreds of years to navigate the rocks at night.
Yeah.
What you're seeing right now is an interior and exterior of Sakana Lighthouse at dusk, and that's kind of when I start shooting. Um, the biggest challenge, um, one of three big challenges for this project is being able to capture the timing and the characteristics of the lighthouse. Each lighthouse is very different, whether it's plastic lens, a Fresnel lens, it's kerosene, it's solar powered, it's rotates, or the lens rotates around the bulb, or the bulb is LED. Every single one's different. And so coming into this project, um, you need a lot of practice time for long exposures. Um, and this unique experience was challenging for the lighthouse or the light itself, but the bigger challenge was getting access and getting on the rock outcropping. This is a very small footprint, and you can't tie your boat up to it. You can't kayak it. You can't swim to it. I've tried 3 helicopter services to ask to get permission to drop me off on it. They won't do it. And in order to get on this, we had to take a steel workboat and lash up tires and fenders and bumpers onto it. And then in a couple of passes, I would um, jump off the boat with all my gear. And the guy driving the boat said, good luck. I'll see you in 2 days. So I spent 48 hours in the steel can of this Sakana lighthouse, sleeping a day and shooting from dusk till dawn.
If I could interrupt for a second, I've been near Sakana Lighthouse several times, in boats, and you look at it and you think, how could anybody possibly land a boat land a boat there? I've also flown over it in a helicopter, but I didn't ask to be let down.
Yep.
But yeah, it's a really difficult place.
Uh,
Scott Brown from that group, the Friends of Sakana Light, has been on the podcast before, so I think he may have been the person who facilitated this for you. Is that right?
he was part of it. So he Scott and I have a mutual friend who introduced me to it, and Scott once in a while will take friends of the lighthouse association to promote and show and share. And it's got to be on the right weather, right day, usually in the summer when the water's flat, as you can see in this picture. Um, but it's very challenging. You can't just roll up if you're a handicap or wheelchair. Or it's pretty rugged to get just on the island. There's a few steps notched into the rock, but you got to be pretty quick. And the rock is covered in bird droppings, and it's not pleasant, but it's a lighthouse. So, um,
Probably
so I
slippery.
very
Slippery
slippery,
getting on there? Yeah.
very slippery. I mean, it's probably, I don't know, maybe 500 square feet of rocks, and then
Yeah.
it's completely covered. So, um, it's out on a out rock cropping, so there's nothing else there to disturb the birds, and they like to hang out there. But getting back to Scott, he's the lighthouse keeper, and then he put me in touch with Cavignon Marine, who does a lot of the maintenance on it, and um, I convinced them to, I signed my life away with a waiver and contacted the Coast Guard to let them know I'd be out there for 2 nights, and um, so they wouldn't get any you know calls from the local neighbors concerned about the lighthouse and working properly. And then I met up with Mr. Cavignaw from Cavignaw Marine, who does the service work on there, to arrange for my gear and the special boat and the right weather to get on board. And then I got there, and he dropped me off, and he's like, "I'll see you in 2 days."
Yeah.
And it was very um, I was elated because I had accomplished the first of the 3 challenges here, was getting on board before I even was in the lighthouse. Just getting on the rock was a big accomplishment and a weight lifted from this challenge. And was there for 48 hours, shot at night, slept during the day as much as I could, and we redid the reverse process of getting me off the rock onto the boat back to Little Compton. And the process basically was get as much stuff as I can on me. And he drives the boat up on the rock. And then I jump on the boat. We pull back. I unload everything. We would wait for a set of waves to pass by, drive the boat up on the rock. He pulls away. I put as much stuff as I can on me, pelican cases and backpack and a cooler and a makeshift bed. And then he comes back up on the rock, and I jump on and we pull away. And it's about a 1 mile motor from the lighthouse to Little Compton um, dock.
Yeah. Again, I was, to just interrupt for a second, you talk about distant photos, and probably 90 something percent of the people who've ever photographed this lighthouse have taken it from the beach there in Little Compton. That's pretty, I guess, like a mile away, right?
Correct. It's that beach is right by the dock where we left from, and so it's about a mile motor from the dock to the lighthouse where these rocks are. And it's, even if you have the biggest lens, a 600 millimeter lens, it's still looks like a lighthouse that's far away. So, um, you know, um, and again, that's the whole idea of making this a kind of a bringing an analog technical experience to with a digital tool by um, just getting up in there and doing it, and being the elements and the of the weather.
Yeah.
Um, and so um, I got to spend 48 hours here and started set up. I mean, that lighthouse is, the light is 65 feet above the water. So, and I had two loads of gear with me, Pelican cases and a cooler and two jugs of water, one for showering and one for drinking. And um, I had to put all the stuff at the base of the tower and then climb up the ladder that's bolted to the side of the steel and the concrete, and then drop a rope and kind of like a Swiss Family Robinson style, take everything and haul it up by hand, and then make a little studio bedroom in the, um, I guess you could call it the engineering room, where the battery box and charger is for it, and it's one level down from the light.
Yeah. Sometimes
Um,
called the watch room as well.
Correct, and it's got the watchroom has clear discs so that when it was used to be lit with kerosene, you wouldn't have to be inhaling the kerosene, and you can still see the status of the light through these, almost like a deck prism, through the
Yeah.
steel plates. And I began shooting and didn't waste any time shooting, because one of the biggest part of this process is being able to understand the characteristics of the light. And I have to do a lot of cleaning because no one maintain the maintenance is very low on this. So I bring out razors and chamois and professional grade cleaning spray and paper towels, and um, I don't want to come home after this special project and just have like these dirty windows. And so I got up there, I went straight into it, and then um, you got to do a lot of practice shots. If you think of the days of film and you get 36, 24, maybe if you're lucky, 36 rolls of film, you would look at your light meter and you'd guess where you think where your settings would be, and you take a little notepad and you write them down, what your ISO is and your f-stop and your shutter speed, and then you shoot it. And then a week later you get your results back, your processes back, and then you get them back, and then you match those up with your notes to know what your settings were, and then you pick half of that, maybe half of that rule of 36 or and then a quarter of that half is good, and then the other quarter is really good. And then that's how you build your portfolio and your body of work. And but you only have, my initial request was to spend a week out here, and Scott Brown, the lighthouse keeper, was like, absolutely not. So I finally gave us again some 40 hours, because you have to practice all these shots. And what happens is you get to a point of too much darkness and whiteness and light, like what they call chiaroscuro, it's contrast between light and dark. And so a light like this, which flashes, it goes, if it's past dusk, you're into midnight now when it's complete dark, you go from complete dark in the lantern to extremely bright. And some of these lighthouses are designed to cast lights 30 miles, and I'm 3 inches from the beam. So it goes from, once you're past the gradient, soft tone, warm colors, you go from dark sky, dark room, and bright light at different intervals. And then you can't shoot anymore, really, because it's kind of like shooting the moon. When the moon's really low and colorful, and then you can shoot to your blue in the face. But when the moon gets to a certain height, it becomes white against the black backdrop, and you can't see the tones and the craters and all that nooks and crannies of the moon, similar to the lighthouse. So I would shoot as much as I could and then I'd have to stop and I'd rest for a little bit and then organize my little room, my Airbnb, if you will, and um, then I would get up super early, around 3 o'clock, start prepping, putting on safety gear and hard hat, and I mean I was loaded to the T with safety gear because I'm 65 feet up by myself with little communication, and um, and that was one part of the stipulation is that if I'm injured, they're not coming out to get me. You know, who's gonna like the Coast Guard is gonna extract me from the in the lighthouse, and so I had to be super conscious about my own rules, like self-governing, like always harness goes on and a headlamp goes on and knee pads go on at dusk, uh, and a lot of those stuff stayed on. There's not a lot of space in it to walk around. The catwalk is steel. It's slippery. It's covered in bird poop. Like it's a lot of small unknown things. So you just got to be prepared for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then I would kind of repeat the same shots for the morning in terms of technically, but you'd also want to try different positions to see based on if you're backlit or frontlit from the sun. Um, and then I basically just hung out and did some relaxing and even was able to do some business through my phone during the day or take a nap. I made a bed out of a where I was staying. There's these steel girders and that make up. They're kind of like a pizza shape in a circle, and it's steel. So I brought a piece of like a 3 foot by 7 foot piece of king starboard marine plywood and a foam mattress, and that was my bed. And my life jacket was my pillow, and an extra shirt would tie around my eyes to take a nap, so it's super bright during the middle of the day. And I would get restless from not sleeping and shoot a couple cool shots or get on the VHF and talk to my friend that would sail by and that kind of thing. And he he was so confused as to who was calling him because I was 65 feet higher than him up in the lighthouse and he's sailing by in his 30-foot sloop. So um, and then around 5 or 6 o'clock you start getting into photo mode and getting serious about what I was doing, and you'd have to I would go through the LCD screen in view mode to see what my mistakes were because that was my editing room basically. And then I would, if I knew that I had like master nailed that shot, then I would go on and practice more because I wouldn't want to do all that and then be gone and come back. A big thing with photography and digital is you can get very caught up and excited and kind of ahead of yourself with the photos on the monitor on the back of the screen. But then when you get to your office and you look at the monitor on a 20-inch screen, something's out of focus or there's something in the way, you didn't nail it. So um, it was a bit risky in that sense in terms of the guaranteed good photo. And then the next night went through, and um, I got super lucky on the weather. It was clear and beautiful. One thing I did not plan for was the a storm that came by, and off to the west you can even see this cloudiness. That's the sunset facing Rhode Island and Connecticut. There were lightning bolts in the sky, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm in a steel can by myself. Like, am I going to get zapped and toast if I get hit? um, there is a lightning rod on board, but is it connected? Is it going to work? No one knows.
Yeah.
um, and luckily the storm faded away and I was able to get some rest. But um, and then around 5 o'clock on Sunday, the maintenance man, Mr. Kavanaugh, came and picked me up, and we reversed the role of loading everything, making 3 trips. One, two, three. Yeah, 3 trips to get everything back on board, and I'm safe. So a lot of planning and luck on the weather, and some pretty hardy, solid logistics to get out there. was able to accomplish this sort of vision and goal. And that was August of 19. And I still have an ear to ear grin talking about this experience. It's really, which then set the precedence. I didn't have the idea of this night house story and project until after this. This is what I knew what I wanted to do, but the title came after. And this was kind of like the aha moment to to pursue this project. I have
Mm,
other photos in my library from years of past where I was able to do this, but it wasn't as focused or as much of a project. And
yeah,
so I'll add them because they're very unique and very hard to get to, and
yeah,
you'll see a few more. And it's not just in Rhode Island or New England; some other parts of the world.
yeah. One thing I was just thinking about, Matthew, is that when you stayed overnight there, you were probably the first person to stay overnight in that lighthouse since keepers left. Maybe not, but there's a good chance of that. And that was 1955 when it was discontinued. Later, a light was put back in it, but I'll bet you were the first person to sleep in there in like almost 70 years.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
I think there might have been, whether there was, if there was maintenance people out there, they were there out there were stuck out there, whether it's modern current times or back in the day during
Yeah.
the lighthouse keepers. But I would guess you're pretty accurate about that time frame of spending time out there.
Yeah. The group there has done an incredible restoration of that lighthouse. It was in terrible shape at one time.
It
Yeah.
was, and that's kind of the other thing that became a result of this project is a lot of people who organize and donate and cut checks to preserve this don't even know what it looks like. They don't know the condition of it. So I'm actually a little bit of a reporter for the trusts or the foundations that support these buildings. And so I can go in there and tell a little bit of a story or keep them updated. And then once I get back on land, I can give them a presentation. And they love it because one, they can't get out there, and two, they're cutting checks for this place to keep it alive.
Yeah.
So that's a nice perk of this little project.
Yeah.
um, should we go on to the next photo, or
Sure.
okay? So, and again, this is Secana Lighthouse. This is kind of, if I go back one photo, you can see this is kind of a snapshot, and it's kind of flat, and it doesn't have a lot of art into it. It's more of a technical photo. Uh, the next photo is even later in the day, and you can tell there's a very long exposure with the blur of the clouds in the upper left corner and the waving flag. This is somewhere around 30-second long exposure, um, and there's some magic with lighting in there too. Um, but this is the I would say this is the one of the best photos of the series and the epitome of the project.
Yeah. I love that. It's a great photo.
Yeah, thank you. Um, and you can see to the left, there's the door. I had to bring some tools with me because a lot of these doors are steel against steel and they're rusty. And um, this is taken on the lower catwalk. So you would um, take this and then walk inside, and there's a little hatch just behind the red wall. And then once you're in the lantern room, you can then see, if you look to the left, there's a black slot for an air vent. To the left of that, there's a hatch, and that hatch is probably 2 foot by 2 foot. So I'm 6'2", and you can imagine how not fun it was to constantly go back and forth and change something or go outside, and um,
Yeah.
made it very tricky. But and that's another challenge about these lighthouses, working within the confines and space of these lighthouses. It could be, some are gigantic and some are very tiny. And so you have a tripod that's very close to you, and the camera's like right up against your face, and the camera's right against the lens of the thing. So, and in order to get the shot, you're looking to the side of the viewfinder, and the other side of your face is smushed up to the glass. And you get to really know, become intimate with these lighthouses when you do this stuff.
Yeah. I was thinking another part you would have to go back and forth, I'm sure, through the opening inside the lantern room, if they're coming up from the watch room, the ladder. Historically, that opening would be called a scuttle, and sometimes
Yep.
those are super small as well.
And yeah, I'm 6'2", and I have pretty broad shoulders, and I can't wear sometimes to make moving and handling is wear my cameras around my neck, or I have a tool belt that's got a lenses in it. I can't do that because the width of these scuttle holes are pretty narrow because of the confines and constraints of the parameters of the space. So it's a lot like um, it's another challenge, but it's not as big as the index of the story. But you've got to sometimes you're stepping on the gear, or you got to move it, but you got to move it this way, and then you got to move it that way, and then you have the legs of the tripod, and it can get very um kind of get a little bit of cabin fever,
Yeah,
which is and working with all that, and you got to be very sensitive to these. You're you're getting granted permission to be around this sensitive equipment, the lighting, and you can't touch it, you can't, you're going to get, can't be around it, or you can't mess with the wiring. And so um they're simpler lighthouses now because they are um,
automated.
automated software technology, but as opposed to an old kerosene lamp or something like that. But still, you're
Yeah,
granted permission to do this, and you have to be careful and leave it better than you found it.
right.
Um, let's go on to another one. Um, this is Goat Island Lighthouse in downtown Newport, um, which is kind of cool. It's not getting access into it, but it's a tricky spot to be um, on the water and on the dock. Um, Shot from being on a boat is pretty tricky. With sometimes you have to use a gyro stabilizer on the camera to eliminate any waves or wind, and the fact that this lens is green, which is pretty rare.
Yeah,
Um, and um, again, back into Secana Lighthouse. This is a random order. There's no sequence of these photos, but this is even later. This is probably a 2 or 3 minute long exposure where now you're seeing the whole galaxy of stars and long cloud trails, um, and no fill flash, but facing frontlit of the lighthouse, but doing some special lighting inside the lantern to showcase it, and show the people of the world what lighthouses see up close from a mariner's point of view, the types of lenses. And this goes back to about the contrast between light and dark. If you're up close to a lot of times, it's either going to be really, really dark or really, really bright. So finding the happy medium of being able to see these beautiful Fresnel lenses, whatever size they are, the the carving of this glass is phenomenal. It is truly a beautiful thing to see in person. Um, and I think there'll be a few in this. You can see the one behind me is very much like that. Um, and to be inches from it is pretty unique.
yeah.
Do you know this one?
Mystic Seaport.
That is. Yep.
When you actually gave me a little preview, and I said Brant Point, Nantucket, because the one at Mystic Seaport is kind of a replica of the one at Nantucket.
Correct. They are replicas. And this is again, this I did was not able to get access into it, but it was pretty challenging to get access to stay on the property of Seaport overnight. They have security guards. This is a closed off property, and so this I was able to talk to the manager and the security guard. I was actually there for the day because I'm a professional sailor. I was working on a boat that was featured in the wooden boat show at Mystic. So this was taken at the same time. And then at night, when everyone went away, I was granted access through the whole grounds of Mystic Seaport. And I get to spend 6 hours practicing these shots of um, Mystic Lighthouse in the harbor. So again, about practicing the long exposures and getting access. Um, this is Edgartown and Massachusetts Lighthouse. Um,
Martha's Vineyard.
Yep. And then just the beauty of the construction. You can still see the steel panels that are bolted together. That's kind of what Secana looks lighthouse looks like inside, and what I was sleeping on or around.
Uh-huh. If I
Um,
could interrupt for a second,
sure.
Edgartown Lighthouse, this tower originally stood in Ipswich, Mass, on the mainland.
Hmm.
And after the lighthouse at Edgartown was nearly destroyed in the hurricane of 1938, the one from Ipswich was moved out there. So usually these cast iron lighthouses like this one have a brick lining, but
Yep.
when they moved it, they never bothered putting in a brick lining again. And it didn't have a stairway for many years. It was just a ladder going straight up to the lantern. So the stairs were added in
Wow.
fairly recent years. It's a modern steel staircase. Does Secana have a brick lining? It does, doesn't it?
It does. I think it actually. I don't know if it's just at the bottom, but there is a. It almost looks like there's a double layer of brick.
That would be right. Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah, but it's neat having the sort of bare cast iron here rather than the brick lining. It's makes it more unique.
yeah, and when you convert it to black and white, it makes it a little more technical. The biggest challenge what you'd see from this photo is getting an even grayscale, going from the dark black of the top and on the railings, and then finding the grays and then the whites, and then the bright white of the light. So there's a lot of fill flash and a faster shutter speed, because if you had a long exposure, you'd have way too much light coming in from that window. Um,
Ah,
this is not New England. So if you can, do you know this one?
Bahamas, right?
Yep, Elbow Key.
Yeah,
Oh, Elbow Reef Light and the Abacos, kind of the northeast part of the Bermuda. Um, I spent a lot of time.
Bahamas. I'm
Yep.
sorry to
Sorry.
interrupt you. Yeah.
Yeah, Bahamas. Sorry. I spent
Mm.
a lot of time in the Bahamas as a professional sailor, and I have family that live not far from that lighthouse. So, um, a very fascinating story, a unique. I think it's the oldest still running kerosene lit lamp.
I
I don't
think
know
it's
if
the
the
only
crew.
one, except I think there may be one other in the Bahamas still using kerosene as well. But
Okay.
this, if not the last, is certainly one of the last lighthouses in the world using still an active lighthouse using kerosene.
Yep,
Yeah.
I will defer to you on the facts and the
And having a
history.
resident keeper as well, which is pretty unusual these days.
So, do I have a time for a short story on this?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm in here. This is part about being a journalist and a photographer and kind of thinking on your feet. And at the base of this lighthouse, you can see there's two little shallow huts, and one of them is where the lighthouse keeper lives. This lighthouse is open to the public, and during certain hours, you can climb up the stairs. You can see the pattern with the little windows in the tower of the red and white stripes, and you can get up to the um, first catwalk, and you have to go through a little hatch, and then you can walk outside on the catwalk, and then you can see inside, but you can't go further up into the lantern. And um, I went back down the stairs, and I said to myself, I'm going to talk to the guy. You could when I was up there, you could see that the lantern room where the lamp was locked with a padlock and a hatch. And I went down. So I was like, this is the Bahamas. It's pretty relaxed. This is not like Fort Knox or New York City or something. So I'm going to try this. And I get to the little hut. And I knock on the door, and I had three cameras around me and tons of camera gear on my waist. And I said, hi, my name is Matthew Cohen. I'm a lighthouse photographer doing a story for National Geographic and trying to submit to them and blah blah blah. Is there any way that I could get access into the lamp and see the lamp? And um, he really didn't care, and he was like, "Here's the key." So he gave
Uh-huh.
me the key, and I hustled back up, and um, there were other people there, and I kind of got scooched my way past them to get in there, unlock the thing, and get into the actual lantern room. And what happens up there is it gets so hot. Another element and challenge to deal with these lighthouses is that during the day you have this greenhouse effect where it's, I mean, stinking hot up there.
Yeah.
And they have these cloth, these canvas curtains to keep the heat out of there. And there was a small hole in the born like corner of the window. And side story, I my dad was an ornithologist, and I grew up on a bird farm for a number of years of my life, and so I know a fair bit of about birds and how they act and how to handle them. And when I got up into the lantern, there was a 1 foot tall East Indian woodpecker stuck in the lantern, flying
Yeah.
around and about to impale me with his beak. And I was dodging him and trying to.
Wow.
Like, and so what I would, um, he was going to die in there. He just was. I think he flew in from the bottom and made his way up to the light and tried to get out and was stuck. So he was definitely not going to survive living up there. And I tried to. He rested, and I took the cloth fabric and kind of folded his wings. And if you take birds and cover their eyes, they relax, they calm down. And right where this corner of the this canvas was a hole, probably the size of a soccer ball, and where the glass had broken or something like that. And I was like, sweet, I can just shove him out the window. And I got him through the window, and I was so elated that I saved the bird from dying of starvation and heat exhaustion in this 100-degree weather in this lighthouse. And he was still in that sort of like relaxed meditation, like shutdown mode. And he was in a bullet, kind of a bullet shape. And I just see him go over the edge of the railing in that form and not fly away. Like I thought he was going to die again and impale the ground 80 feet or 75 feet down onto the concrete floor. And I ran out the door, like scurried out the door and looked over the railing, and like 2 feet above the ground, he flew open his wings and took off and uh, lived. So he like almost died, almost lived, almost died, and then lived again. um, but this lighthouse is in pristine condition, and it's got a lot of those steel or iron framing along the windows that are you don't see very often.
Yeah. I think it's been recently restored because on the podcast I interviewed a woman named Annie Potts, who's very involved with the organization there.
Hmm.
And it had a lot of damage from the I think it was Hurricane Dorian in 2019.
Yep.
It was pretty devastated. The whole island, a lot of the Bahamas were devastated by that storm, but they have since restored it. So I think,
Yep.
yeah, you've gotten to see
Correct.
the restored lighthouse.
This is not too far. Still somewhat in the tropics. This is Gibbs Lighthouse in Bermuda, um, and the this is where I was. I was actually open to the public, but it's a great indication of lighting. And this lighthouse does not. It has a rotating 5 beam light, and you can see the actual flares that come off the window. But you need to spend all night here and taking these long exposures, because if you look down at the trees below, they're a little bit blurred from shaking in the wind from like a long exposure. But you can't go too long, or else the whole lantern gets completely blown out, and you don't get to see any of those that five like pentagon shape burst.
Right. It's an actual glass Fresnel lens, a classical Fresnel lens, right?
Correct.
First order, I think it's a big one.
It is a big one. I don't know which order is, but I do remember, and it's open to the public during the day. So I would have to, like, I went up there for see what it looks like, but I just camped out there for like 4 hours to wait to the darkness. And usually you have to go, if you're nice or no one's around, you kind of have to hop a fence to get a good angle or be respectful, but just sometimes you have to break the rule to get access or get in a
Yeah.
good position. So
I checked
um,
and it's a first order lens. Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, I was
It, it,
there, my wife and I were there, I think more than 20 years ago now, and climbed it.
it's
It's one of the tallest cast iron lighthouses in the world. It's in the
Does,
top few
does
tallest.
it say where you are, how tall it is?
Um, Give me a minute, I'll tell you. You can keep
Okay,
going. I'll get back to
sure.
you on that.
It's tall. It's tall from
I'm
the.
gonna say about something like 130 feet, but let me double check on that.
Yeah, it's a lot of steps.
Close, 118 feet.
Yeah. And here we're back at Mystic, Connecticut, and the seaport, but a close up. And I just love the clarity and beauty of this Fresnel lens, and the simplicity of this photo. But again, about permission, being here after normal business hours to get the shot. During the day, there's 900 people per day walking around the grounds with their pro cameras and their amateur cameras and their smartphones doing the same stuff, but not very
Yeah.
rare to have it during the night.
Mystic Seaport is great. They have the Charles W. Morgan, the historic whaling ship as well. You can see that.
That is a beautiful vessel for sure.
Yeah.
Um, this is Race Point Lighthouse, then to the north of um, Provincetown, and this photo you can see how desolate it is, and it's very desolate. It's very barren. It takes 2.5 hours to walk it in deep, soft sand. And Christmas of 22, I was out here. The day after Christmas, I was out here, and I spent 6 days, covered 600 miles of all of Cape Cod,
Mm,
and spending most of the night. This one of these nights here, and got lucky on the weather. It was cold, but not just bearable. And then in order to get out here, I was schlepping 20, 30 pounds of camera gear and very soft sand. There's nothing out here.
yeah.
There's not even a grasshopper or a mouse or anything. It's
There are
super
seals sometimes, maybe not right there, but not far from there. There are seals, but
correct. But you
and
you could hear a pin drop here. It was
yeah,
desolate.
no sound
And
of gulls. You think?
uh, in December, it's pretty
All
cold, and
right.
they kind of just
Yeah.
settle down and aren't very active.
Another
Um,
thing you can see from there sometimes is humpback whales offshore, but you don't hear them, but can see them sometimes. I've been there when I saw them breaching and stuff.
yeah. So I would say this photo is not so much permission, but just having the sort of fortitude to do this. Just schlep all this camera gear on the cold in December through soft, thick sand. And if I didn't have, if I was nowhere near this lighthouse, say halfway between the lighthouse and the parking lot, and I didn't have a headlamp, you wouldn't see 10 feet in front of you. It's that dark.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so you know, for future reference, in case you want to go back there, that is under the management of the Cape Cod chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation,
Okay,
and I
great.
know them quite well. So, it may be possible to arrange a visit where you actually can go inside and stuff like that.
Sure, I'd love to follow up on that. I think the house is pretty cool there. It's just kind of barren, and it looks like there's no one living there. And
Well, not year round, but it's open for overnight stays for the public in the spring through fall.
yeah,
Yeah,
um, do you know this one?
Nauset Light on Cape Cod. Yeah,
Exactly. This is the famous one you see on the bag of Cape Cod potato chips.
exactly. That's what I
Uh,
always tell people too, so they know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
so um, this is that same trip when I spent the gap between Christmas and New Year's of 22, and wait, if you look to the bottom left, there's a red light at the little visitor center, and there is a big parking lot, and everyone just off to the frame of the left side of this frame of this photo is the big bluffs, the big sand dunes that drop 200 feet down, and um, it's kind of a surfing spot and whale spotting. It's just a beautiful view that faces. The next thing you get to is like Africa from here, and um, during the day, tourist season, spring to fall, that whole parking lot is jam packed up. And what you see from that parking lot is the other side of this lighthouse, and you can see a brim of Christmas lights because this is right after Christmas. Um, but the whole point of this project and this photo is to show different angles of it. So there was, it's not it's kind of like in between public and private property. There was an access road that didn't have a name on it, but it didn't say private road. And I think as long as you're there and you're polite and you're not creating a scene or playing music or doing anything to disturb the peace, no one's going to care. So I think that's a big important factor about this mentality to have with this sort of photography, is that you've got to be honest and polite and maybe a little bit sneaky to do some stuff like this, but it also sort of showcases that you don't it's very rare to see this side of Nauset Lighthouse, because 9,000 people per day see the other side of it.
Yeah. Well,
Or
especially at night. It is open sometimes for open houses during the day, but not
sure,
many people see it like this the time of day when you were there. Yeah.
and you're not going to be here between Christmas and New Year's. You're going to be in like Florida or Texas.
Hmm.
So um, now this is kind of this kind of goes back to the technical and the infrastructure of the lighthouse and the steelwork and another Fresnel lens. Um, this is Diamond Head out in Hawaii,
Ah,
and I was out there January of 14, just on personal and photo opportunities. And um, this lighthouse is on the mainland of Oahu and near the Diamond Head crater. And at the base of it is a Coast Guard station. So this is Coast Guard operated. And there's a bosun that's there who takes care of it and whatnot. And the night I was there, I borrowed my friend's car and shot some great photos of it from a distance. Um, but there was a sign, I'll never forget this. There was a sign out front said closed for private function. And there must have been a Coast Guard party or something like that. And I just waited. I staked out like cops do on a stakeout with some hot chocolate and, food and drink with a sandwich. And when I started seeing people, I waited a couple hours for this party to end. And when people started coming out, I scrambled and food was flying everywhere to get all my stuff ready and cleaned up and to go talk to someone. And I talked to the bosun and I said who I was and what I was doing. And I asked if there was any opportunity to get on the grounds. And he said, not tonight. I can let you walk around for a minute on the, like on the driveway to get close to it, but I can't let you come on the government grounds tonight. And I said, what about tomorrow morning at 4 o'clock?
hmm.
And he's out of your mind? And I was like, no, I'm very serious. And he's a sailor and too, and we started chit chatting about rum and dark and stormies and how hard it is for them to get Goslin's ginger beer out in Hawaii. And I was like, I'm staying at my friend's house. It was a bar in Waikiki, not far from here. I know she's got a handle and some ginger beer. So he agreed to let me come there at 4 o'clock in the morning the next day to get, um, I think this shot.
Ah,
And this shows the Fresnel lens. It's like beauty of its prisms, and it's a split shot. So this is long before sunrise. I know the sky in the background looks white, but that's before first light. That's why I had to be there at 4 a.m. And I had about an hour there before he had to kick me out because didn't want to overstay my welcome. And um, this is what a mariner would see from 20 miles away.
yeah. It just makes me think, when you're in a situation like that, it's a real, it's a big help to get to know the person a little bit, like you did with the Coast
Yeah,
Guardsman there.
you're building, you're building the trust, and you got to showcase that you're dedicated to doing something like this, and you've got to do your homework. The more it's the kind of that 7P rule, the prior planning prevents piss poor performance. And if you do a lot of planning and preparation and just be nice and professional, and they'll usually give you some access, um, and you thank them or you tip them or you always carry cash. Cash is king. Cash will get you a lot of places.
Yeah, or
And
ginger
this
beer.
and ginger beer has, as in this case. Always keep a handle of rum and ginger beer in your car.
I'll remember that.
Um, and then going on, this is nowhere near any of all the last photos we saw. Not even in the states. This is in Panama, and this is the entrance to the canal on the Cologne northern side. And I was on a yacht delivery back in January to March of 2007, and I was on board for 7 or 8 weeks. And the boat comes into this is just around the corner behind that palm tree is a marina called Shelter Bay, which was a shack, and now it's a fully operational marina. And um, the uniqueness of this scene was I was bored and didn't have anything to do when I was working on a boat for as a yacht captain and crew to deliver this boat through the Panama Canal to get to the Pacific. And the crew went out to some bar or whatever, and I decided to pack up my gear, and I wanted to walk along the beach to get to this lighthouse. It's super cool. It's got this like interior stem, but then this staircase exoskeleton, um, and this some sort of, I forget what it was, but some sort of light there was green. And so lighthouse is always red or white, and the sky is usually blue, and so you get this a lot of unique colors there. The the more entertaining story of this was this lighthouse is actually on a Panamanian army base. I did not know that. So
Huh.
because I walked through the grass to get here, or I was in it, like inadvertently didn't notice a fence, and I'm walking down the road. I can't remember if I was getting to the lighthouse or after I was done and going back to the marina, but um, I'm walking down this dirt road and I see like light beams from a vehicle or a truck or something come around the corner, and I'm like, I might be in big trouble right now.
Hmm.
And I'm in Panama on an army base, and
This is a Panamanian Army base, not a U.S. Army base?
correct. And I just took a chance and literally jumped into the 6 foot tall elephant grass and stood still and prayed. And they drove right by, and I waited, and I got out, and when the coast was clear, I sprinted back to the marina. I mean, you know, and then when I actually was leaving, I realized I was on like a Panamanian army base.
Hmm.
So, um, many thanks to the Panamanian army base for not
For not
locking me up
shooting
and
you.
shooting me or taking my camera gear to
Yeah.
produce this shot.
I'll just point out, in case viewers are wondering if that's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, the Leaning Lighthouse of Pisa, it's the camera lens, right? It must be a really wide
Correct.
angle
I
lens you're
and
using.
correct. Good call. It's not leaning. It's not about to fall down. It's not the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It is part of the lens. This is probably a 16 to 35 millimeter lens. It's not
Hmm.
quite fisheye. If it was fisheye, the top of the tower would be kind of leaning more and curved towards that
Right.
center cloud. Um, the 16 to 35 millimeter lens is one of my favorite lenses to use. It creates a little bit of curvature on the horizon or on long planes, but it's not weird and goofy like a fisheye.
Right.
Um, you can get creative with a fisheye, but this is a little more realistic. Um, Now we're back to the East Coast, and again, this kind of goes with what I was talking about, with the getting access and the the beauty of the Fresnel lens. This is Pemaquid Lighthouse in Bristol, Maine, and this is open to the public. Anyone can go. This is not any special access. It's open to everyone. You give it like a a non non-specific denomination of charity to fundraise. You can see if you look close to the lower right of um, the light bulb, there's a piece of Fresnel lens that's missing, and they were on a hunt to fundraise to recreate this piece. And Jeremy, you'll know better than I will about the cost of this stuff, but I think that that piece that was broken was in the neighborhood of like $10,000 for that little piece or something.
I was thinking at least several thousand. These days, a lot of people, when they're repairing lenses like this, they'll have an acrylic replacement piece made.
Yep.
Guy Dan Spinella in Florida who specializes in that. He makes whole acrylic lenses like the one at Rose Island he made,
Sure.
which is a replica. But he
Uh-huh.
can make replacement prisms like this. I'll just mention also in this photo, you've got what I believe was 1,000 watt light bulb in there.
Mm.
Now there's a modern LED inside that lens. The Coast Guard has been replacing a lot of the older lights with LEDs inside for old Fresnel lenses like this. It's kind of cool. It's like a marriage of the old and new when they've done that.
Sure, and I'm glad you brought up that point. A lot of this is too to showcase the world what's happening with the trend of lighthouses. These sort of like Fresnel glass and incandescent bulbs and kerosenes are becoming dinosaurs because everything's switching to more efficient LEDs and solar panels. So I part of the mission is to document this stuff before it goes away. Um, and and I just love the beauty of the colors, the natural colors you get from the lens here at Bristol Pemmican Lighthouse.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
and
that's inside Pemmican. I know that stairway.
correct, not too far from that lens is the staircase, and it's just gorgeous with this the different colors of the brick from mold or red or brick or blue or green or whatever. It's just stunning. So, and the technical photo, the technical aspect of this photo was framing to use some of the staircase to block to diffuse the light coming through the windows, or um, probably a little bit of editing here to bring a little bit of light to the brick because you have so much white light coming from the sometime around midday when everyone's there. And you gotta have to be patient and wait a little bit because you find a gap when when tourists come. Like the whole family comes in. It'll be like mom and dad with 3 kids, and they gotta look around. They take their time, or one kid's crying or something like. And you just be patient and you wait a little bit, and then they clear out, and you get your shots before another group of tourists come in.
Yeah, it's a super busy place in the summer, that's for sure.
I think, and you're both know, like again, I defer to you for facts, but I think this is one of the most visited lighthouses, and
It's probably, I think it's in the top five in Maine. I think it gets something like 100,000 a year there, if I
that's a
remember
lot of
right.
people. Yeah.
It's under another chapter. The Lighthouse Tower is under a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. Everything else there is owned by the town of Bristol.
Okay.
Yeah, they have the museum and the keeper's house also.
And not only the lighthouse, but the the area of the lighthouse on this um, granite, I think it's granite rock ledge, is
Yeah,
gorgeous. The ledge that this lighthouse sits on is very similar with of the multicolor of the brick of the types of rocks that are underneath it, and then there's 2 roads that go from Route 1 down to this lighthouse are beautiful, especially
yeah,
on a beautiful summer fall day when it's like the people that made the road were like car enthusiasts. They were like test track drivers because it just winds and curves, and it's just
yeah.
you're grateful that they made this beautiful roadway to get to this beautiful lighthouse.
Yeah, I love that area. I know that area quite well. Yeah,
Um, this one's close to home,
yeah.
and this is Castle Hill Lighthouse here in Newport, Rhode Island, and it's a small lighthouse. It's probably something like 15 or 20 feet tall. I don't. It's not very, but it's very historic. Um, it has everything to do with the regattas that happen out just behind you see behind it. And as a professional sailor, I know this lighthouse very well from the exterior. Um, it's on sort of private property. It's part of the um,
Castle Hill Inn.
Castle Hill Inn and Resort, and but you can go there as a guest to go to the bar or something and go check out this limited parking area with a little path through the woods to go check this stunning view out. And as you can see, it's frozen there with the snow and the rocks, so there's no one there and no one cares. But it's just
Yeah,
not it's
I
not hard to get to it. It's not impossible, but no one really wants to
yeah. In my
do this.
experience,
Cool.
if there's a gate you have to go through, there's always somebody at the gate, at least in season. And if you tell them you want to just photograph the lighthouse, they might say, well, park at the far end of the lot there. But if there's like a wedding or something going on, you might not be able to do that. So,
Exactly. Hence the snow here. I waited all summer to wait till the winter for this.
yeah,
Um, and
that's cool.
this is Rose Island Lighthouse. This is an opposite view of the previous photo. This is actually not so much about the lighthouse, but the photo taken, where it was taken from, and how it was taken, and when it was taken. What you're seeing is sea smoke, and where the air is drastically colder than the water, and you get this evaporation. So everyone thinks it's fog, but it's not. It's this really, and it's frigidly cold out. And this is not a helicopter. This is not a drone. This is from the highest point of the Newport Bridge with an older camera. And um, I went over the bridge one direction to check out the traffic and the scene, and then I turned around and I waited on my return eastbound lane. I I made sure that there was no one behind me, and I got to the arch and literally stopped my car on a 60 normal, like 60-mile-an-hour road, snapped a few shots, got back in the car, and got out of there. But the perspective, the height. This is before drone. We're talking like 2005, maybe 2008. Drones were around, but they weren't as fast or as capable or operable and technical. And so,
Yeah.
um, a
That's
favorite
the
of
same. That's the view. When I first saw this lighthouse, it was in the late '80s from the bridge there, and it was all boarded up. It was in terrible conditions. That's another great restoration there. The
mm.
Rose Island Lighthouse Foundation.
And you
Beautiful
can see
place.
what's unique about this is it's super low tide. Um, to the bottom right is the foghorn room, which usually is about um, 6 feet, maybe 5 or 6 feet above the water level,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of shore exposed, the dark rocks. So,
Hmm.
um,
I've stayed overnight in that fog signal building. It's an overnight guest room. You can stay overnight in the lighthouse building, but you can also stay overnight in the old fog signal house. Yeah.
exactly, I I live a mile from this lighthouse, and it's kind of funny about what it takes to shoot this lighthouse. I was out here last November. They gave me permission to spend 3 days on the whole island by myself, and staying in the apartments that you can rent out on the second floor, and in exchange for photos and giving them some help with the property. And normally when I got to do a photo shoot, I will take a few days to prep my bags and camera gear, and then I'll fly 1,000 miles to Bermuda or the Caribbean or the other side of the country, and then I'll unload all my camera gear in a hotel, and then I'll prep it and go out and shoot it, and then I'll reverse the order and pack everything up and fly home and unpack everything. And um, the same thing has to happen with this lighthouse, except it's a mile away,
All right.
not 1,000 miles away. So it's kind of funny to do the same process, but very easily to get there. And I was actually out here last Friday, um, doing some volunteer work for the foundation, and
Uh-huh.
it's it is. I recommend to everyone to get out here and enjoy it. It's downtown Newport is hustling and bustling and noisy in the winter and in the summer, more so the summer. And this island is a historic museum and a boatload of information and history, and it's super peaceful. So,
Yeah,
um,
I agree. Great place.
moving a little further east, this is Knobscolite and Woods Hole. And uh, going back to that same trip I did between Christmas and New Year's of 2022, I made this pit stop before I got back to Rhode Island in Woods Hole. And the unique thing about this scene is that there's only 4 parking spaces to the public in this lighthouse, so it's very hard to get to, um, and it's a very narrow road. There's 9,000. I don't know why I keep saying 9,000, maybe 10,000. Nine sounds like a good number to say for this podcast, but um, there's a lot of people on this very narrow road who want to get out and take a photo and can't. So
Yeah.
when there's not a lot of people here, it's cold, but there's parking. And um, this is taken from a drone, um, being doing what's called bracketing. Basically, taking a lot of photos in different settings to then somewhere you take, say for example, you take 10 photos, and the fifth and sixth photo are the best ones because the first ones are too dark, and the last ones are too overexposed based on your setting changes. So a bit of bracketing with a drone to get the elevation and look directly into this lens at sunset.
It's perfect, perfect exposure there.
Yep. And you have a lot less control of lighting with a drone as you do with a $5,000 Canon 1DS Mark III, which is what I have. And so it's more of a snapshot, essentially, what you see through the drone through your phone. Um,
Ned's Point.
exactly, Mattapoisett, Massachusetts. A cute little park, a small lighthouse. Only about it's a great story of this one. I know it's exactly 35 feet from the ground to like the base of the catwalk. And the reason I know this is I was practicing some video maneuvers with the drone, and it got a little close, and a seagull flew by, and I dodged the seagull, and the drone slammed into the railing and got stuck right at the edge of the railing. This is about, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. No one's there. And I actually had the phone number to the Mattapoisett Park system to gain access to talk to these people during the day, but this is the morning. And I wasn't about to call them at 6 in the morning to go ask them if I could rescue my drone. So um, I looked up on Google Maps, and the closest Lowe's, which is about 20 minutes away, opens up in about 10 minutes. So I jumped into my truck, bought, splurged on a $550 35-foot extension ladder, strapped it to my roof, and drove back here. And since the ladder maxes out is a little bit for 35 feet, I knew that the catwalk was 35 feet because I was able to put the ladder almost to an unsafe position, rest it on there, climb up somewhat sideways to keep my center of gravity closer to the ladder and not fall backwards 30 feet. Get to the top, grab the drone and kind of put it in my mouth like a pirate and shimmy down this ladder, put the ladder back on the the Suburban, and then go to Lowe's and say, sorry, this this ladder was too small for the job. So I could get my $550 back, and hightailed it out of Mattapoisett.
Yeah, you can never go back, right? Uh,
No, not if I unless I give Mattapoisett or Ned's Point Lighthouse some photos or something.
yeah. Well, I know
Um,
when you first said about the height, I was thinking 35 feet before you said it. And that brings up a point. In the old days, the government, when they listed heights of lighthouses, it was always to the base of the lantern. So the lantern in this case probably adds another 12 feet or so.
mm.
But the height of the tower itself, without the lantern and the deck at the top, is 35 feet. Yeah.
And clearly you can see there's some Christmas decoration too. And I know that it's got a little door and it's got a ladder inside for maintenance. And so a goal of mine was to to at some point get access into the lighthouse, but not that day.
I can point you to the right people if you need.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, and this is a little practice with the drone. Again, it's a public park. It's a nice park, especially at sunrise because it faces east. There's plenty of parking and grass for activities, and Mattapoisett's a beautiful little captain seafaring town from the days of old. So,
Yeah.
um, and I think that's it from the slideshow.
All right. You can go ahead and come out of screen sharing. All right. Excellent. Very interesting. A lot of good stories. It's interesting how, for a photographer like you, every photo you have brings back, it's like sense memory. You think of the whole situation, what you went through to get the picture.
I think
So,
that a lot of people always ask me, "What's my favorite photo?" And that's kind of like after shooting for 25 years and having over 2 million photos in the archives, that's a very hard question to ask. But
yeah.
there are some that stand out based on what sells the most, or what was the hardest to get, or was kind of like I wouldn't say emotional, but just took a lot of energy to capture.
Yeah.
And some of this project that shooting these night houses is exhausting.
Yeah.
Not getting
Yeah.
sleep and going into these dirty buildings and cleaning and being on your knees all the time and aches and pains and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
some lighthouses are easier to shoot. They're probably much more beautiful, but they're bigger. They
Yeah.
The smaller ones are the hardest ones to shoot because they're so small.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like
It's
it's
like
like
price
putting
of art, everything you go through for that.
exactly. It's kind of
Yeah.
like working in a boat's bilge to reinstall an engine. It's pretty cramped and to
Yeah. I just want to remind people that we're doing an audio interview as well for the podcast. So I think we'll get into some of the other stories of getting some of the. We can talk about non-lighthouse stuff too. Some of the interesting experiences you've had getting
sure,
sailing photos and that sort of thing.
love
So
to.
people watching this on YouTube or wherever should also check out the audio podcast interview as well. I think they'll work together quite well. So let me ask you before we sign off on this. Again, your project here with the lighthouses is called Night Houses, and it's a little different from there are other photographers. Some of our listeners will know Dave Zapatka's photography. He also lives in
Yep.
Rhode Island, who's really made it a specialty, the shots of lighthouses at night, but really in the dark with the stuff from always from outside the lighthouse and the stars and Milky Way and so forth. And Pete Laro, a friend of mine, another great photographer, also does a lot of the night photography. In fact, I took a workshop with him last summer, and I went through kind of the stuff you're talking about. He kind of it was great, but he kind of ran us ragged with not much time for sleep. We do both night photography and daytime photography at the same
Yep.
lighthouses and
Oh,
stuff like that.
then yeah, because you're not resting during the day. You're going full. You're going all day long, all
Yeah,
day and night long.
it was fantastic. I was kind of glad to get home to sleep too, but got some nice shots at night shots at Pembroke Point for one place.
Sure.
So that was great. Yeah. But anyway, but you've done some great work. And what with this Night Houses project, what is your ultimate goal? Are you going to do a book with these?
I've got some presentations to line up to showcase. And yes, the goal is to have a nice, solid, weighted coffee table book. I
Hmm.
think this has been a culmination of trial and error and coming up with something that hasn't been done really before. A lot of people ask me, is it just the lighthouses of Rhode Island, or is it a certain type of lighthouses? And the answer is no to both of those. The the main one is whatever I can get access to. It's with the automation, the Coast Guard, a lot of lighthouses are now being auctioned off or sold by the Coast Guard to the civilians. So you gotta knock on someone's random door to say, hey, can I shoot your lighthouse, which is someone's house, which is a little invasive. So you
Yeah.
want to be respectful and polite, but sometimes you can't. And so what I'm getting at is that this project will take it's kind of a longitudinal project because I don't have that many stock photos that give me this access or give me this permission or allow me to spend a week inside a lighthouse. Um, and it'll
Yeah.
probably, I've probably there's a handful that we saw just now, but there's probably 100 that I've got now, and I'm probably going to have to shoot another 100 more to really put together some sort of presentation and
Hmm.
100-page book that really shows variety and the stories that go with them. It's not going to be a book of just like pictures or just kind of the same boring like slideshow. It's going to have some of the stories that go into it. I think that really captures the people's audience because any book, any picture book, and I grew up with picture books. That's why part of why I'm a photographer is it's a book and a caption, right? So it's pretty and it's beautiful, but readers want more to it. They want to know the grit. They want to know and everyone will ask me, how did you get that shot? And I'll tell them most of it, not everything, but
Yeah.
once you do that, you can kind of showcase to a broader audience, and it comes the photos come to life a little bit more.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you completely, and I really look forward to seeing your book. I think we're probably talking at least a year or two away before you get to
Yeah,
that
I've
point.
got to find. Still got to. I'm still in photo mode. I try to find a publisher and someone to design it. So
Yeah.
um,
Well, again, I know people at a lot of these lighthouses, so if I can be of any help with that, just
yeah, I'd love to. We probably collaborate and make it a win-win.
yeah, absolutely. So Matthew, thanks for doing this today. And again, I just want to tell people who are watching this to check out the audio interview as well, because I think they're kind of meshed together.
Sure.
There might be a little overlap with some of the same discussion, but there'll be some different stuff as well.
Happy to
So
provide.
continued good luck with the project. I look forward to seeing how it develops
Thank you, and
in the
thank you so much
coming.
for this.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Matthew. Take care.